I'm Elizabeth Alfano, host of the Awesome Vegans Influencer Series and the Plant-Based Business Hour. As part of the Vegan Museum Presents, here's a brief interview with museum founder Kay Stepkin.
I thought I had started Chicago's first vegetarian business when I opened the bread shop in 1971. I had been eating natural foods for 5 years. I knew all the so-called health food stores in Chicago, and I knew there was nothing that was vegetarian. About 5 years ago, I was invited to talk on a radio show about Chicago's vegetarian history, which I thought I knew. I talked about our history, and it went pretty well because afterwards I got invitations to talk at other Chicago organizations about vegetarian history. After the first interview, I went online thinking maybe I could find one or two tidbits about our history that I didn't know. I was stunned. I was really thunderstruck to learn that Chicago's vegetarian history goes back to the late 1800s. Well, I knew that if I didn't know we had a history, neither did most anybody else, because somebody would have said something to me in all these years. I think it's very important to know where you come from, to know that you can get help and support from those who came before, even that you don't have to repeat the mistakes of the past. Knowing your history gives you a richness and a depth. I needed to spread that word to people. We needed a museum. We are looking to move to a permanent location in the near future where we can create some larger displays. Perhaps we'll have our own room in an existing cultural institution or neighborhood cultural center in Chicago. Once we have a permanent spot, we could then take our traveling exhibit, start sending it around the country in the care of other vegan organizations. My journey went from eating natural foods to becoming a vegetarian to becoming a vegan, and it stretched out for decades, much longer than it has to stretch out today. It all started in 1965. I graduated from college. I moved to Berkeley for a couple of years. One night my roommate was out. I was browsing through her bookshelves and picked up Thunderball, a James Bond book. About page 6 or 7, Bond's boss M had a very serious talk with him. Bond was run down, his blood pressure was too high, he wasn't sleeping well, he was not in good shape, and M insisted that he go to a health farm. What I recall M saying to Bond is that we remove dozens of nutrients from whole wheat to make bread, to make white bread. We add back 7 nutrients and we call it enriched. In a James Bond book, here I read these interesting thoughts that I had never heard in all of my young life up to that point. For some reason, this just fascinated me. Went to the library the next day. I came home with an armload of books and I started reading. One of the books I read was Silent Spring, so I was learning about the environmental damage we were creating, and also read something about the terrible conditions of the animals in our huge farming system. Slowly then started changing my diet. I learned how to cook brown rice instead of white. I ate more salads. I started eating healthier. One day, without a conscious decision being made, I realized, wow, I have not eaten meat for over a week. That was it. I'm not going to eat it anymore. And with just a couple of exceptions, on that day, I became a vegetarian. I was working as a waitress in Chicago at the time, and I got attached to some of my customers who were so nice, and I started getting overcome with guilt. I felt so bad that here are these people I cared about and I liked so much. I'm a vegetarian, whole grain, organic, and I am feeding them hot dogs, feeding them hamburgers. I just felt increasingly bad about it. Within a year, I opened the bread shop. Becoming vegan took me another 40 years. After I closed the bread shop, I slowly cut out dairy and eggs. And one day I realized that the only time I was done with dairy, the only time that I was eating eggs was a restaurant I would periodically go to that I loved. With that, I realized, well, dummy, just don't go to that restaurant anymore. From that day to this and forward, I have been a vegan. My view of the future is not going to start off in the most uplifting way, but it is what motivates me to work so hard for veganism. We are not going to have a future if we keep going down this path. Some of the environmental problems that we are already facing are food shortages, air, water, soil degradation, massive extinctions of a variety of plant and animal life, erratic, unpredictable weather patterns. We are in the midst of several food-related health plagues: heart disease, stroke, certain cancers, diabetes. They are not going away by themselves, and neither will epidemics or pandemics. Leading us to the big question: how are we going to be able to work together harmoniously to change what must be changed so that human life and well-being continue on our great planet? The answer? As a social species, we cannot survive independently of each other. Along with changing the way we eat, the way we live, and the way we relate to the rest of life, we also need to change the way we interact with each other. I believe that we need to develop our character to become people who can be trusted, who can be counted on, and who are respectful of others, both human and non. As we do that, we will more and more be able to live with each other and with the rest of nature. Each one of us must individually decide who we want to be. The first step to change our planet is to change ourselves.